Okay, we're gonna cover Battlefleet Mars. We did a couple of battles over on the tactical map to show how the combat system works. I don't know how much detail I'm gonna go into in playing out battles. I also showed at the end of the second battle, and these are the first palace and second palace videos. I doubt that I'm gonna do full videos on battles from now on within the game. But at the end of the second palace video, we had a description and a little bit of indication of how the abstract combat system works. I'm gonna try not to use that. The results are different, significantly different. Like, the abstract combat results is much more likely to give you advantageous results. So we were on the 126 to 150% battle range, and I don't know why I'm covering this here in this detail. The best that the defender could hope for in that is pretty much a tie on each die roll, which would conceivably draw the two forces closer together and drop them down to the 101 to 25%, at which point, yeah, continual bad rolls by the attacker could end up bad. So, a particularly unlucky series of die rolls could have caused the results that I got out of the battle that I did some indication of on both systems. Anyway, let's get to what my history is with this game. So I remember seeing this first described, I think. Well, let's see when this was written. This was written in '77, which makes it unlikely. So maybe I picked up an old copy of the of an S&T or something where this was one of the proposals in there. Because I vaguely remember reading the proposal for it. Now, I already knew the game, probably, because '77 is about when I started, and I don't think, I think the proposal would have come out quite a bit earlier, probably a year earlier. Anyway, it was a game that I heard about and whatever, but I never saw a copy of it, and my SPI games were hard to come by where I was, okay? I would have had to see it used, basically, because the two stores that I went to that were anywhere near me, like within about 45-minute drive, didn't carry SPI games. They carried Avalon Hill and TSR, and one of them carried GDW and a number and Iron Crown, carried Columbia. They carried all kind of companies. Their distributors didn't carry SPI at all. So it was hard for me to get the SPI games. I ordered SPI games a little bit. I know that I got War of the Ring over there through mail order. I may have gotten a couple of others, but something got screwed up in one of my orders, and I stopped ordering from the company because of that. I might have picked this up under those circumstances. But I eventually was able to find a used copy of it somewhere or another. I can't remember where. I've had it for a long time. And played it a couple of times. I didn't have a very good response to the playing of it. Reading the rules gave me a huge woody, okay? Because this is a game that not only is there a 3D vector combat system, which, if you saw the playthroughs of that, is a little dull, to tell you the truth. Largely because there aren't a lot of different technologies and whatnot in play. There's not a lot to differentiate the ships, and some of the choices as to how the ships operate within that system don't work I don't give you a hell of a lot to play with. Basically, weapons and engines all are, you know, all have arcs that are completely spherical. You can basically shoot or move in any, or apply thrust in any direction with no limitations, which I find not only highly unreasonable, but also kind of defeats the whole point to having a 3D system at all, right? And the vector movement, whatever. Okay. It also has, unlike, say, High Frontier, an appropriate tracking of all the different planets in a way that you're going to be able to determine your launch windows, not, you know, in terms of how long it will take you to get from point A to point B very easily. You also don't have to do a lot of work in this game compared to High Frontier for movement between celestial bodies. Planets aren't the only thing. There's four asteroids in the game as well. And Jupiter, although it's represented as the planet, is actually Ganymede. It covers production. It covers political rules. It covers the morale of the different planets. I love morale rules. These are not the most complex. It covers secret agents and their operations within the planets. It covers a hell of a lot of stuff that, honestly, to put it all together in another strategic game, the first one that I felt like had all of this and more was actually Advanced Third Reich over here, in terms of just, you know, which does it in more detail and also has technological expenditures and whatnot. Certainly things like production were in play in other games. There might be some of these other facets in other games, but this gave you such a rich set of concepts. Also, when you read the rules, they very much give you a lot of the backstory and paint the particular, you know, world or worlds that are, you know, that are being represented here in a way that you have a pretty damn good grasp of what's going on. You've got a conflict between the primary private corporation, the Ares Corporation, which has handled the mining and extraction of materials from the outer planets and the asteroids, in transport and processing and all that. And you have some of the workers who are essentially going on a rather extensive strike. One involving taking over the part of the military of this corporation, which is a really intriguing, you know, concept behind what we would see within a intrasolar system conflict. You have a third party that's involved in this that's a non-player, which is the Word. The bird is the word, that is basically the world government of the Earth. And they have significant influence and can call truces and whatnot and put limitations on the conflict. However, they have no military of their own, at least not when it comes to the space situation. So they can't really enforce their will too much, but they're related to the Earth morale levels. So let's take a look at what some of the materials that are present are and what they represent. First of all, each of the items in orbit around the sun is presented with a track, a location where the planet starts on the start date, which was printed on the box. What is it? January 2096, and I'm assured that they are supposed to be correct by the designer for that date. And each game turn, these are going to move, and you'll see the different orbits allow them to move in relation to one another in a way that they express a distance between one another. That distance can be measured using this thing. And you have a couple of these, which allow you to trace, let's say you're going from Earth to Venus, you would track this and place this. You would actually place it to where Venus would eventually be. So it's kind of a sliding scale. You determine how long your trip is going to be, and you're going to represent that on a track heading towards whatever location you're going to head to. So that's what all this is it's the track heading towards a particular location. Now, there's mechanisms to handle what happens when you change direction and such not, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Each player has a production track, fairly simple little one. Ares starts out with some stuff on it, printed here. You have this track, which gives you a number of pieces of information on it. Logistical points, which is basically your money for production. Morale level on a 1 to 100 basis, I guess, even though it goes out to 16. Political points available, which you track when you try to do political actions with your agents. And some information here, which is the production capability. So Ares always has 12 production. In terms of they can have up to 12 ships that they're building. The Martians have more limited production, but it eventually works its way up to 7 per turn. All right, let's look at some of the other stuff. The tactical combat is handled here with a percentage combat results table. You roll, you get a percent to the attacker and a percent to the defender. That's taken of their total force. And then we have kind of a thing that helps you calculate on that. A whole set of all the different morale effects and what is going to affect morale within the game. What the hell is this? This is, okay, some of these other things are supposed to be here. This is the this is the amount of political points. This is where you track that, as opposed to the logistics and the morale. Why do you not put morale here? I don't know. I think, yeah, morale actually goes here. So Earth morale starts here at 55. Yeah, they over. And that's going to give rolls that can cause random effects due to your morale being at that level, which might include word doing something. You have various tables that are triggered by the morale tables or by actions that you take. So, for example, you can make assassination attempts. The revolt table is used at the beginning of the game to set up the initial revolt by the spacers, as it were, who are going to be, they're the Martian player, they're the red counters. Sabotage is available. There's the initial deployment, sequence of play, negotiations, which is involved if word calls a truce, the truce table. We'll get to these as we hit them. They make a lot more sense in the rules than trying to figure them out just from the chart. Each heavenly body that's in play has its own space here, which is the close orbit, a cometary orbit, which indicates that you've gone out far enough that you're no longer in combat range, but you're still kind of staying close in to the body. so that if additional forces come in, you can join with them as if you were in the one box. I think that's about it for that. We have a ton of ships. Now, I've got all the ships and bases located in the planets they're supposed to be at. Some of them, the Ares player is going to get to decide where a bunch of additional ships go. It looks like there's fairly large stacks here. They're twice as big as they need to be, because in order to use the XYZ mechanism that the 3D combat uses, you need 2 counters per ship. One for the XY plane, one for the XZ plane. And that goes with bases as well. These are the agents that are available. Both players are going to be setting those up at the beginning of play. And what else do we have? With tactical combat charts, I've explained these when we looked at the tactical combat system. Likewise, we have a battle record, which again tracks the losses and expendables used, fuel, missiles, fighters, within a given combat. Something we haven't looked at yet is the entire strategic status record. Basically, every counter in the game is represented here, and each side would have a record of whatever counters they have, whatever ships, bases, whatever that they have, and the status of those in between given battles, so that you can mark damage and whatnot on them. Other counters, you're going to have task forces. Those are allowing you to kind of hide what forces are where. At the beginning of the game, all the forces have to be known because we have to plot out the revolt situation. Although, I think these might be able... Nah, I don't know if these... I don't know what quite the situation with those are, how well known those are going to be to the Martian player at the beginning of the game. We'll see. You have some additional ships and bases available because the full possible production isn't out there. I think there's a counter mix limit for the ships in the game. It's going to be a pain in the ass if there's not. I played as if there's no counter mix limit on the fighters and missiles. If there's anything like a significant battle, the counter mix is insufficient to cover what's required for the battle. But these are not like... These are sort of like ammunition, essentially, right? You may have to go back to a base and get more, but every ship in the game has its full complement of fighters and missiles when they're... Well, it has its complement of fighters and missiles that it's purchased, received, whatever. Not really purchased. And then finally, well, penultimately, we have these vector markers. They're used in the tactical combat. You can look at one of my tactical combat videos to show that. And then we have these ends that I have no fucking clue what they're for. Let's see if the game... Neutralized. Ah, yes. So, okay, if a base is neutralized, it's not able to fight anymore. And that would be basically what you do. You might do this with some ships as well. It's used on the tactical combat chart in order to indicate, hey, this is unable to fire and has no effect anymore. It'll surrender. All right, I got to swap batteries, and I'll be back in a bit. I think I'm going to try not to be as long-winded in my full description of the game rules, like not read through them all. 28 pages of SPI rules is quite a bit of words, and it's not trivial to find where the rules are embedded in all of the source material. Okay, so let's look at the sequence of play first. First thing that happens is that all ships in transit are going to be moved a box closer to their destination. Then you're allowed to declare new destinations for ships. If the ship's simply on a planet, all you're going to do for this is you're going to make a measure with this thing, find out how far it goes, and there should be a calculation. It's not going to be on here. This is just tactical. I'm a little surprised there's not a little calculation table here, but there's a means to determine. Oh, it's right on the chart. That's what it is. Yeah. So what you do is you put this space on the point of origin where the ship currently is. This is the base case. And then if it's going to be in the 1 box, it'll be within this range of where the planet would be on the next turn. If it's going to be in the 2 box, you move it out to there. And then the 3 box, the 3-turn box, I'm not sure quite what you do. These midpoint things are used when a ship's already in transit and you have to figure out where its new location is that it's going to change direction from. So for example, if I am 2 turns out and I want to see where if I'm taking a 2-turn flight and I want to see how far I am to calculate what it would cost me, what the new place would be, I would actually range this. Let's say I'm going to Jupiter from Earth. I would range this from the Earth space towards the Jupiter space. And I don't know where I would be. It would be a 1, 2, 3 turn. I would be heading out to here, right? And then I would line this up properly, right? And then I would find the midpoint, kind of mark that. And then let's say I wanted to switch my direction towards Ceres, I would then determine my distance this way. Now, obviously I have some momentum already built up, quite a bit actually, and there are calculations that are going to make use of that. I just wanted to show you kind of the base case of that as to how it's going to work. Just to let you know. Okay, combat phase. All right. If ships are in the same location, and it has to be a celestial body, asteroid or planet, and they're opposing sides, they fight. And that can be done of one of 2 ways, either using the abstract combat system or the more detailed tactical combat system. I think I'll be using the tactical throughout, but we shall see. Okay. Political interaction. You get your political points, which is based on your morale. And then I believe you you roll on the morale tables, resolve any truce negotiations, assassinations, counter revolts, or sabotage that result, and make any necessary adjustments to the morale indices. The Ares Corporation rolls first on the Earth morale, then the Martian player rolls, and you may adjust these die rolls by expending political points through agents. I believe those are done simultaneously, and I believe they're planned simultaneously and secretly. So when I roll on this table, we could expend political points to affect this table. When I roll on one of these other tables, we can expend political points to affect those other tables. You have a number of political points as listed here that you expend, but you're limited by the power of the agent. Most of the agents are going to be 1-point agents. Now you can take a look and see, wait, all the Martians are not. Yeah, but once they get killed, they'll flip over and be replaced by a 1-point agent. So the Martians have good publicity, agents, people embedded in the system, etc. early on, but it becomes much, much more difficult for them to operate as they go later. Earth has only one particularly powerful agent to begin with, And he also, if he is eliminated, will end up coming back as a 1-point agent. Logistics and maintenance. Ships that are on the production track are advanced. Ships that hit 0 are deployed on the appropriate solar display. That's going to either be Earth or Mars. Those are the only production locations. I think, I might be mistaken about that. Martians may be able to build something out at Jupiter sometimes, but I'm not sure. But certainly if they lose Mars, they're in trouble. And they can spend logistics points in order to start building new ships, to repair damaged ships at any friendly planet or asteroids, and they can expend them to, I think they have to expend to do refits and stuff like that, so catapults have to expend to get them, and they may have to expend to supply a ship with fighters or missiles the first time. And then all the planets move one space. And then you start over. Now, at the beginning of the strategic game, there is a peculiar setup as I try to figure out how to get my chair so it won't wiggle. All right. The first thing that happens is you set up all these pieces. The Ares player is going to be able to put these ships in any transit boxes he likes. Right. Now, all ships in transit may be placed on any ship transit box exclusive of Mercury and Venus. Mercury and Venus are unimportant in the game. They do have orbit locations. You could have a fight on them if you so desired. There's no reason anybody would go to them except as a waypoint to give themselves flexibility, perhaps. I don't know. I can't think of a reason that you'd want to be there. Now, okay. Anything exclusive of Mercury and Venus by the corporation player, they must be placed at either the 1 or 2 transit box of that ship chosen. The origin point for all ships in transit is going to be considered to be Earth, excepting those ships in transit to Earth whose origin point is considered to be Mars. That may be important later. Yes, it is important because you have to know what the direction, if you have to make a change in direction midway, you have to know where the origin was. There is no way to mark that, which is problematic. All right. Then each of the 2 players can place their agents in in-orbit boxes of any ship transit track other than Venus or Mercury. The corporation deploys all 9 of theirs on the solar display. After that, the Martian player puts his 4 down. These are not secret. Then we resolve the revolt, the initial revolt. There might be other revolts triggered by the morale table. Although the Martians planned carefully, there's some chance of variability here. After all ships and agents have been deployed, the revolt table is consulted to determine how many ships and asteroids remain under corporation control and how many rally to the Martians. As each player and asteroid is separately, at each planet an asteroid is separately rolled for, the Martian player selects from the ships present in that asteroid which ones will revolt, up to the number indicated on the revolt table. Revolting ships and asteroids, as well as Mars and Jupiter, which will revolt automatically, have their counters flipped over to indicate Martian control. For each asteroid or planet, an R result on the revolt indicates a successful seizure of the power by the Martians. Barring capture or counter-revolt, that asteroid or planet will remain friendly to the Martians for the remainder of the game. Once it's determined how many ships join the revolt at a particular planet or asteroid, the Martian player selects which vessels go to each side. The Martians have to limit their selections for each asteroid or planet to the ships actually on that ship transit track. Those could be ships heading there. The Martian can never receive more ships than the indicated number of ships revolting, but it is possible for him to get less. The Martian player can never select any transport ships to revolt. Transports are always going to be friendly to the corporation player at this point. Die rolls on the revolt table may be influenced by expending political points. To expend them, you must have an eligible agent present, and you spend your political points off the track. That's why you have points at the start of the game. The utilization of the revolt table to resolve this revolt does not affect the morale indices in any way. Then we go to a limited initial game turn, which consists of a combat phase or tactical game sequence, a logistics and maintenance phase, and then a planetary movement and game turn indication. On that first game turn, there's not going to be a transit allocation, and there's not going to be a ship movement phase, and there's not going to be a political interaction phase. Every further turn follows the full sequence of play. You set up your fleet status sheets with the ships that you own. Each player should differentiate between friendly and enemy-controlled ships on the fleet status chart. Yeah, conceivably we could keep track of everything on one sheet. Both players are supposed to be able to track everything, which to me means that all hits would have been recorded. There would be no secrecy over in the Tactical Combat series, even hidden trackable information. I didn't realize that. I prefer to do what I did with the tactical game, which means in the strategic game I'm also going to have that. Which is to say the information's present to both players, but they're not supposed to track what the condition of the other player's ship is. They have to kind of rely on their faulty memories. At the start of the game, no catapults have lasers. They basically can't shoot, which makes them pretty damn useless in combat until they've been refitted, which makes them an iffy choice, but they're more powerful ships to keep, and they could run away on that initial revolt, so you kind of don't want to lose them. It's an interesting set of choices. We've talked about the solar system display and how that works. Movement of ships. This is complex. I think we need a break. So I've already indicated the general rule for the time distance track. And this is usually what you're going to use. Let's hit each of the movement rules in order, and we'll look into the particular case of switching directions, because that's the complex case in the movement situation. But before I hit that, there are these task force markers, and there are two counters for each task force. One goes on the board, one goes on the stack of ships that it represents. It's a way of you being able to keep hidden just what is in transit, or what's in a planetary orbit for that matter. At the beginning of the game, everything has to be revealed because you're going to be the Martians are able to select stuff and things like that. So everything's open right away, but then it starts becoming hidden as you start tracking things. Now let me go over the specifics of this when you're doing the simple case once more, just to make sure. So if I'm traveling from Earth to Juno, I would mark this, and we would see I just sort of miss the dashed line there, which is no big deal because the one turn is here. Now I would have to track it like this to this space, to the 31 space over here. So from here to 31, that would take one turn. Well, I'm not at one turn, I'm beyond the one turn. So then I go to 32, and I see it's still within the range for a two-turn trip. So any ships that were heading to Juno would be placed on the 2 space when they make a departure from Earth for Juno under those circumstances. That's all very simple, okay? And there's nothing Nothing takes more than 3 turns when it's going direct from one planet to another. All right. So even if you were transiting, from Jupiter all the way to Juno here, yeah, it looks like it's a long way, but the point is that the ship builds up more and more acceleration. So you can see the 1-turn trip is quite short. The 2-turn is much larger. The 3-turn is equally large. It covers the entire map board. So you can always reach anywhere on 3 turns, from destination A to destination B, or from origin A to destination B. The tricky part is if you're in transit and you wish to change where you're going. And remember, communications are at the speed of light, which, you can transmit things at the speed of light over the course of a few minutes or hours throughout the realm represented. Which means that you can make communications to a ship and it could react to it much, much more quickly than the actual transit of the ship itself. So unlike, say, Traveler, where the universe is like, the movement of ships is faster than light, and there's no faster than light communications that's faster than a ship. There's no it's why the Traveler games like Fifth Frontier War require you to plot your movement and everything in a different sort of way. But here for calculating ship transit allocations for ships in transit, you set up the time. Let me try to get this right, because I'm not sure I actually get it. You set up the line in terms of where it's heading. Okay, so this would be heading towards here or whatever. Now we're looking at a 2-game turn trip, so that would be heading for here. So I would kind of associate it this way. Now, any task force in transit which is being shifted from one ship transit tack to another, the owning player makes an approximation of its present position. This approximation is fixed by measuring the line of travel with the time distance measure and dividing it into a number of segments equal to the number of total game turns needed to traverse it. The approximate positions at the juncture of 2 of these segments along the line of travel is fixed at the junction of 2 of these segments of the line of travel. Example, if a task force needs 3 game turns to traverse its line of travel, which is the case here, use the time distance measure to divide the distance into 3 even segments. If the task force has been traveling for 1 game turn, the approximate position is fixed at 1/3 of the way to the destination. So that seems a little weird, right? If the task force has been traveling for 1 game turn, the approximate is 1/3. I think that's this dashed line here. But this gets more confusing, because this says midpoint of maximum distance, which feels weird. If it has been traveling for 2 game turns, it's considered to be 2/3 of the way there. Or for example, whenever a task force needing 2 game turns to get somewhere has been traveling 1, its approximate position is fixed at midway between its origin and its destination. All right. This looks like about the halfway point and the 1/3 point. But what's up with this, right? Is this the point that I'm at traveling to here? It's stated differently. It says midpoint of a maximum distance 3 game turn trip. That feels weird. Like something, and I would feel like, well, this is 1/3, this is 1/3. I don't know, right? I just don't know. I don't know what they're trying to express with this, and they're not, why is this dashed here? What's up with it? Why the midpoint? Who cares what the midpoint is? I want to know the 2/3 point, right? That's what the rules are saying. if this is the 1/3, well, this looks like the same distance of the 2/3. Would I add another one of these in? That doesn't make sense. I've gone too far. I should be slowing down. So I'm accelerating. Midpoint is where I would start slowing down. And that's what disturbs me, is that I don't really feel like this is supposed to be the midpoint. I feel like that is actually closer to the two-thirds of the travel. Well, that feels more like I've traveled 2 turns, right? Because I've been accelerating. All right, that's 1 turn. Accelerating. If this is where I start decelerating, then I would travel this much more on my next trip, and that gets me there. And that feels all wrong, right? But I don't know. Anyway. And again, it feels like maybe I should be using a ruler, and finding the 2/3 space, not using this time distance trip measure. But it doesn't really feel like it's talking about that. Okay. Let's keep looking. After the approximate position has been fixed, which I think is the ruler, right? But does that make sense? Would I actually be 2/3 of the way? I think so. I'm not positive though, right? Because once I hit the midpoint, now I'm decelerating. It feels like this isn't really the midpoint to here. The midpoint is somewhere else. So I don't even know what this is meant to be there for. Okay. After a task force approximate position has been fixed, and you put like some thing down to remember that, the players must visualize a straight line at right angles to the line of travel at the approximate position. This line is going to be called the transit line. Then you note where the task force's new destination is, and whether it's above the transit line, further in the same direction, or below it back in the previous direction. The owning player utilizes the time distance measure to measure the distance between the task force's origin point and its alternate destination, as per 8.22. Okay, so you recalculate to where it's going from where it came from, but you subtract 1 from the number of game turns it would take to traverse the distance from the task force origin to determine the total transit line to its alternate destination. If the task force's alternate destination is below the transit line, you add 1, okay? Because you've got speed to dump now. And that makes sense. What doesn't make sense to me, and what I don't understand, is where you're measuring. Are you using this thing, which seems not to represent what you're looking at, or are you just drawing a straight line and guessing where 2/3 of the distance is? That becomes the transit point and just determines the distance. I think you're doing the latter. I think this is useless, but I'm not sure, because it actually doesn't even make sense, right? Nor really does this, does it? Yes, this does make sense, because this is halfway to the maximal 2-turn trip. But it's not necessarily halfway to the trip that you're taking. So again, I think these dashed lines are kind of fooling you, right? I think what you want to do is do just a straight measure with a ruler and figure out whether you're at the halfway point or the 2/3 point or whatever. That's my feeling. I don't know why this thing has these dashed lines. Okay, The task force is then placed in the appropriately numbered transit box on the ship transit track corresponding to its alternate destination. So the notable thing is that you don't calculate your movement from your approximate position to wherever you're going. That feels a little weird to me. Instead, you keep the same destination and it's got a modifier to it, or the same origin point and it's got a modifier to the total number of turns it could take, which if it would have been 3 turns might end up going 4 turns. But that doesn't make sense, and here's why. I mean, I would have to be going I would have to be changing from here to here or something like that. I think that's just never going to show up in that kind of painful way. I'll try to guesstimate and figure out what works, but it does seem like you keep measuring from the origin point as opposed to from the location that you actually would be at, and then try to take into account the additional speed that you have. Does that make any fucking sense at all? Right? So, let's say I was going to Juneau, right? And I figure out my cost to get to Juneau. And I have gone 2/3 of the way to Juneau, and now I want to shift here. It doesn't make sense that I should be taking this with a 1-point modifier on it to indicate that change of direction when the trip from Juneau to Vesta is so small. It really feels like I should be doing this from the actual approximate location that I'm at. That is not how this is worded, though. You measure the distance between the task force origin and its alternate destination. And this determines the total transit to the destination. So I could have spent 2 turns going out to here, right? That means I've gone 2/3 of this distance, and I don't have something that, I don't have a ruler, right? I have a tape measure somewhere. But let's say this is about 1/3, this is about 2/3, right? Somewhere around here. Okay. Now, I'll put a die there to remind me. Now, I've flown this far. I'm already decelerating. And what they're saying is that I calculate the distance from here out to Vesta, which is going to be another 3 turns. I've already spent 2 getting to here. Now it's saying spend another 3 turns minus 1. So it would take me 2 more turns to get from here to Vesta when I was aiming at this. I just don't buy that. I think instead what I should be doing is I should be measuring from my current approximate location to the new location. Now, since I'm not going from a starting point, and I've already got velocity, etc., it would make sense that I would reduce 1 from there. That is not how it's worded. So, yeah. And that's what I'm going to work with. I'm going to work with fixing that approximate location, which is not going to be based on this. It's going to be based on a guesstimate of where the ship is. I think guesstimates are good enough. These ranges are huge. And then in the case where I'm here, this would be in the same direction I'm traveling. So I subtract 1 off of it, which says the cost from going here to here, since I already have some velocity built up, is not going to hurt me. Now, let's say instead I wanted to go back here. Well, then I would measure from here to here, which would get me a 2-turn trip, but I'm going in the opposite direction. I've got my velocity going this way. I add another turn. Now that becomes a 3-turn destination to Mars instead of calculating this, which would still get me the same 3-turn destination. But I think the origin should be from the approximate position. And I think they've just got that wrong. I don't know if there's errata somewhere, but a little bit of reasoning makes it clear, to me at least. Okay. If you go directly from your point of origin to return directly there, the task force counter should be on the ship transit track corresponding to the origin point according to the following schedule. If the task force has been in transit for 1 game turn, it will need 3 game turns to return to its origin. If it has been in transit for 2 game turns, it will need 4 game turns to return to its origin. I'm fine with that, right? Because that seems to make sense. It doesn't seem to violate all rules of logic when you start considering the momentum. I need to check that battery. I don't know if it's probably fine. I swapped it in, and it appears to be. Just wanted to check. Okay, cometary orbits, which are these here. A task force that's in orbit can plot an eccentric looped orbit which has the effect of making it far enough from the planet or asteroid to make combat impossible. During ship transit allocation, you can declare, and these declarations are all made simultaneously and secretly, so you may need to write them down. You can declare any ship in orbit to be entering a cometary orbit in lieu of any other transit allocation for that task force. It's shifted back along its ship transit track 1 box when ship transit allocations for that ship transit are executed. Why do we have a cometary orbit? I don't know. I think I'd prefer to put it over in the cometary because it's not really going anywhere, and like it's going from Mercury to Mercury on the 1 box. I think they provided these to make that easier and didn't, the rules were different. Cometary orbits are a form of ship transit allocation, although the procedure is an exception, and they're declared as such. They may not be utilized during the combat phase. You can't withdraw into a cometary orbit. Whole rules on the tactical abstract combat system. We went over that during the second Battle of Pallas tactical video. It's at the end of that. I looked at it a little bit. I didn't worry too much about it. There are some things I didn't talk about. Damage in these cases, it uses just this chart. It'll just mark off strength. And fuel constraint. Battles can affect morale. You can capture locations with it due to a battle. Fuel constraints. Every time you fight in a battle using the abstract system, you're out of fuel, which is noted, and that means you won't be able to participate in a combat. If you end up in an orbit box containing enemy ships, you must withdraw. Catapults. Unlike miners and transports, which are more like patrol ships, the catapults don't start out equipped with lasers. At the start of the game, they have none. Until service, they have major damage. They have no lasers. They can't fire. During logistics and maintenance, they may be fitted with lasers at any friendly asteroid or planet. And I don't think there's a cost to that. I believe you're just able to do it, but you have to be stopped at a planet. Okay. Morale indices in victory. The level of morale on Earth is reflected by the Earth Morale Index, same with Mars. During combat phase, morale levels can be adjusted due to the battles. During political interaction, the Ares Corporation and then the Martian player each roll a die on their particular table for their morale, for the tens digit of their morale. Which could cause you to go to the revolt, truce, or sabotage table. Any necessary resolutions and results are performed immediately. If your morale level falls low enough, you might lose the game. Earth and Martian morales are printed. All kinds of details about this. A little too wordy for my taste. I don't know. If a truce is in play, you roll on the negotiations table by the Martian player. Then the Ares player rolls on Earth morale effects, utilizing the column on the Earth morale index. Then the Martian player rolls on his table. Oh. Okay. There is a summary of these points over there, but I'll go over them briefly here. During combat, Earth morale is increased or decreased by 2 if Ares wins or loses a battle involving 9 or fewer ships. See, for definition of winning a battle, I believe it's holding the territory. Let's take a look. If we're using the tactical, 16.42. Battle is over if there's no attacking ships remaining. If there are no defending ships remaining, the defender wins the battle. Yeah, it's whoever holds the territory wins the battle. Okay. So yeah. And Martians increase or decrease by 4 if, Earth morale is increased or decreased by 2 if Ares wins or loses a battle with 9 or fewer ships. It is increased or decreased by 4 if the corporation wins or loses a battle in which 10 to 20 ships are involved. It's increased by 6 if more than 20 ships are involved. Yeah, good luck with the missiles and fighters in that case. Earth morale is increased or decreased as the corporation player captures or loses control of an asteroid. For each asteroid captured by the corporation, Earth morale index is increased by 2. For each captured by the Martian player, Earth morale is decreased by 4. This is just Earth morale we're dealing with in this thing. During any political interaction phase in which either player is in control of all 4 asteroids, Earth morale is affected. If the corporation is in control of all 4, Earth morale is increased by 1. If the Martian is in control of all 4, Earth morale is decreased by 2. The determination of control is made once per game turn at the very start, of the political interaction phase. See procedure. On the 5th game turn, Earth morale is increased by 1 at the beginning of each political interaction phase. Starting with the 8th game turn, the Earth morale is increased by 2. Starting with the 13th, this premium is cut back to 1 morale point for the rest of the game. So basically, simply by staying around, the Earth is going to start getting kind of upset at the lack of resources, and then they're getting hurt by the lack of resources, so they're less upset, like they're not as angry. There are 6 Ares Corporation bases in orbit around Earth. If one of these is destroyed by the Martian player, the Earth morale is affected. Well, yeah. So the first one that you destroy causes a morale hit. The second one destroyed causes a morale bonus. If the third base is destroyed and further, it causes bigger and bigger morale hits. Okay, what about the Martians? They're a little bit more sensitive than the Earth. They're more involved in this war. They start with a higher morale, 77. During the combat phase, they increase or decrease by 3 for winning or losing a battle with 9 or less ships, 6 for 10 to 20, and 9 if it's more than 20 points of more than 20 ships involved. They increase or decrease if they capture or lose asteroids. For each asteroid captured by the Martians, they gain 3. For each asteroid captured by the corporation, they lose 6. Now, what was the asteroid effect for the Earth? The Earth was 2 for increase and 4 for losses. So here's the thing. In the player's notes, they say you don't want to own all 4 asteroids. And the reason for that is it's hard to defend them all. And you'll have a very easy loss of morale points. But can you control that? Well, a little bit with your agents and your political points, which we'll get to. All right. Now, we talked about, if you control all 4, the Martians get 3 morale points, but if, wait, what? If the corporation is in control of all 4, the Martian morale is decreased by 3 points. If the Martian player is in control of all 4, the Martian morale is increased by 2. So there's an advantage to holding them all. It's not as big as the points you lose for losing them, especially as the Martians. The determination of control and consequent adjustments are made once per game turn at the very start. Yeah, we read that, didn't we? Okay. For any battle during the combat phase in which the Martian player loses 5 or more ships, destroyed or captured, regardless of the outcome of the battle, the Martian morale level is decreased by 2. This is in addition to anything else from the battle and is applied immediately. There are 6 bases. Oh, we did this. I think we skipped that one. A player loses the game when that player obtains an L result on the morale effects table. And you'll see when we get down to the 0, we get Ares victories here on the Martian table. That is an L. And likewise Martian victories here. So they've changed, the tables don't quite align with what the rules say. All right, I'm going to break again. This rule book is so big, and I feel like I have to puzzle out a fair amount and work through it, that I want to do it justice. So I'm trying to be good. Usual kind of melancholy of autumn, which I often love, has been supplanted with this just tremendously painful sadness this year. I can't put my finger on it, why it's so bad this year and not say last. It just feels worse this year. Anyway, all right. Some blah, 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 blah. Each player gets political points each game turn. These can be used on the morale table, the assassination, the revolt, the sabotage, the truce, and I already said the negotiation. I must have jumped through there. They can be expended only through the medium of agents. Each player gets a number of agents, and they can be moved around somewhat freely. Not really. Each agent has a political power value, which indicates how many political points can be channeled through them. During ship transit allocation, agents can embark or disembark from any friendly ship to a friendly base or other friendly ship, or vice versa. During ship movement phase, if they're embarked on a ship, they move with that ship. During political interactions, each player can expend political points in the course of executing this phase. Die rolls are made first on the Earth morale table, then perhaps the truce table or assassination table, then on the Martian morale effects table, and then finally, if called for, on sabotage or revolt tables. Before each die roll, the players declare if they'll expend political points to adjust the roll. If neither declares that political points will be expended, the die is rolled and it's unadjusted. If one player declares they expend points, they get to expend them. They announce orally how many, and the die is rolled and modified by that amount. Any agent utilized to expend political points is flipped over. That's not good, because that turns them from a 2 to a 1. That is not what they mean. It's not a used side, that's a dead side. It works perfectly fine for these guys, the ones that don't have something on the other side, but it doesn't work in general. So again, I think the rules have strayed from the actual components that were provided. If both players declare that they will each expend political points, the players decide secretly and then simultaneously announce how many they'll expend. Each player secretly takes in their hand a vector chit or whatever. Okay. Yeah. And then at the end of the game turn, all inverted agent counters are flipped face up. Again, no. All right. The corporate player has 9 agents, one of which has a power of 2. The Martian has 4 with powers of 4, 3, 2, and 2. The points is the maximum number of points which can be expended. An agent can expend any number of power points during the political phase up to their PPV. They can expend points only once in the course of a game turn, i.e. only on one die roll, chart, whatever. Whenever they expend 1 or more, that agent is inverted on the solar display. What they may mean is turned like this, but I will probably just throw a counter on top of them. Any number of eligible agents can be used to affect a particular die roll as long as you have sufficient political points. Agents can freely occupy on enemy-controlled planets and or asteroids, but remember, they can't move onto them in general. Agents are, however, vulnerable to assassination no matter where they are. Agents never have any effect on combat resolution. I'm assuming if they're on board a ship in a combat, they could get killed that way. Agents operate on the ground, on planets or within bases. They may not move from one to another of their own accord, but they may be transported via a friendly ship. Hence, agents are either debarked on a planet or asteroid. I don't know about this on planets or within bases. I think that is false. I don't think they can operate in bases. But we'll see if there's anything specific about that. Agents are either debarked or embarked. They're debarked on a planet or asteroid, embarked on a ship. Agents deployed on a solar display are considered debarked upon the planet or asteroid. They can only be put on the solar display if the ship transit box indicating they're at a planet or asteroid. Counters, basically there's no easy way, there's no way to slip people onto a planet illicitly, is what I'm not getting that from this line, but I wanted to clarify that. Counters of agents embarked on a ship are placed under the ship off the solar display. The precise ship has to be designated. Any number of agents can be on a single ship. That sounds unwise. If a ship transporting an agent is in a combat, the owning player need not reveal that fact to the opposing player. However, if it's captured or lost, the agent has been caught or killed and must be revealed. Agents during transit allocation can embark or debark from a friendly ship or to or from a friendly planet or asteroid or to another friendly ship in the same task force. Basically, when you decide to send a ship out, you can decide, hey, that agent doesn't want to go with it, or he does. Okay, political points. Every game turn, you can get a number equal to 1/10 the value of your morale level. Fractions discounted. They're use it or lose it on each turn. The application of each political point to a die roll resolution by the corporate player always adds 1 to the die roll. The application of each political point by the Martian decreases the die roll by 1. Either player can apply multiple points. In order to expend them, the agent must be eligible. Cannot be accumulated. All right. Whenever the corporation player obtains an Ares assassin attempt on the Earth morale effect table, an assassination against a Martian agent can be attempted. Whenever the Martian player obtains a Martian assassin attempt, they can attempt to assassinate an Ares agent. When you're granted the object, you may exercise the option by immediately rolling on the assassination table. Any enemy agent deployed may be selected as a target. You cannot go after agents on board a ship. A player may pass up the opportunity to attempt and forego the roll. If you choose to attempt it before the roll is made, the target of the assassination must be revealed. Any agents deployed in the ship transit box which contains the agent who is the target, including that agent, may apply political points to influence the die roll. Any agent who's killed, whether as a result of assassination or combat loss, or who's caught in a captured ship, is removed from the game and replaced during the immediately subsequent phase with an agent with a PPV of 1. Which is why the fact that they're backprinted means you can't just flip them over. Remove corporation agents are replaced on Earth. Remove Martians are replaced on Mars. And these agents are deployed in the appropriate ship transit box. I think Martian agents will show up even if Mars is captured, if that happens. Revolts and counter-revolts. Blah, 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 blah. Ganymede is particularly volatile, is particularly pro-Martian. More than Mars is. Work assignments were juggled. Okay, all kinds of... Yeah, it's really exciting to read, but I don't feel like I need to do so. The revolt table is utilized at the beginning of the game to determine the allegiance of asteroids in each of the 44 ships, excluding the transports from the Ares Corporation fleet. They can be utilized later in the game to determine the outcome of any counter-revolts called for. To use the revolt table, roll a die on each planet and or base. Start with the closest to the sun and proceed outward toward Jupiter. Adjust the result based on political points spent. At the beginning of the game, you use it, and then otherwise it'll fit in if it's called for by the morale tables. Well, if Martian morale sinks low enough, counter-revolts may be triggered during the political interaction phase on the Martian morale table. Only asteroids friendly to the Martian player may counter-revolt. Counter-revolts never affect Earth, Mars, Jupiter, or any asteroid friendly to the Ares Corporation player. When a counter-revolt is called for, 1 die is rolled for each asteroid friendly to the Martian. An L result indicates that the counter-revolt at the base has succeeded. I don't know. Yeah, okay. No, that's loyal. Oh, yeah. So a counter-revolt, you want an L result because you're trying to bring it loyal to the Ares Corporation. The revolts happen at the beginning of the game. Counter-revolts happen later. At least as far as I can tell from the rules. I might be mistaken. Maybe there are additional revolts that could happen here, but I don't see any at the bottom end of things. Okay. An L result indicates that the counter-revolt has succeeded and the base turns to the control of the Ares Corporation and is friendly to that player for the remainder of the game, barring capture, and R indicates that the counter-revolt has failed. The counter-revolt die rolls may be influenced by the expenditure of political points given agents. Counter-revolts affect the morale of both players. An unsuccessful counter-revolt adds 1 morale point to both Earth and Martian morale indices. A successful one adds 2 points to Earth and subtracts 5 from the Martians. Gains and losses are cumulative. Yeah. Ships are never affected by counter-revolts, which may put you in a combat situation, though. Or a potential one. Truces and negotiations. More words about word. Truces are declared by word. If a truce is declared the result of truce on the Earth morale table, under certain circumstances a truce can be declined by a player, in which case it just does not go into effect. If it does go into effect, neither player can initiate combat, and there are strictures on movement. A truce may be ended either through negotiation or through machinations of the morale tables. Additionally, either side is allowed to break a truce. A truce is declared when a truce result shows up. Player immediately rolls on the truce table. And it gives options for declining. And it also gives a site. The site is where the negotiations are going to take place. Once a truce goes into effect, players are bound by its strictures. Players are bound by a truce until it is ended by negotiations, a morale table result, or somebody decides to break it. If the truce is not declined, the site of negotiations is determined immediately, starting with the second political interaction phase following the one in which an operative truce was declared. Negotiations ensue. The truce is already in progress at that. It takes place immediately. Prior to the roll on the Earth morale effects table, the Martian player may rolls a die and consults the negotiation table to determine if the truce will be extended or continue. This is outside breaking it, but you have the option to end it. That's not breaking the truce. That's saying the truce, the negotiations are going nowhere, screw up. Beginning with the game turn following the one in which a truce is declared. Okay, it's not automatic. Certain special conditions apply. The conditions remain in effect until such a time as the truce is ended. Should a player violate these, they have broken the truce. As long as the truce is operative, agents may freely embark and debark to enemy planets and asteroids during the ship transit allocation phase. This may only be done so long as the truce remains in effect. During the movement phase, no friendly ship may arrive at an enemy asteroid or planet, i.e. May be moved into the ship transit box, as long as the truce is operative. There's an exception there, which has to do with the negotiations. Ships may be in transit to a particular enemy asteroid or planet during a truce. They're not allowed to arrive there. So long as a truce is in effect, a friendly ship containing one or more agents, however, may arrive at an enemy asteroid or planet for the purpose of debarking the agents. The ship may remain at the asteroid or planet while the truce is in effect. Okay, this feels weird. As long as the agent is debarked. Why are you allowing the spies to have free access and to allow them to bring a military ship with them? There's no limit to the number of ships which may debark agents to a particular asteroid or planet other than the number of agents. I don't understand that, but whatever. Neither player may initiate combat during the combat phase while a truce is in effect. I mean, he may be some kind of negotiator, but this is not where the negotiations are happening. During a game turn in which a truce is in effect, word supports Ares, word neutrality, and sabotage attempt results are treated as if they're no effect. As long as the truce is in effect, no agent at the site of negotiations may be the target of an assassination attempt. Negotiations begin on the second turn after a truce is declared. So the truce is in effect for one turn. It's not in effect the turn it's declared. It's in effect the next turn, and then the next turn it's in effect and negotiations begin. The Martian player rolls a die at the start of the political interaction, consults the negotiation, adjusting the die roll by political points. When you're granted the option to select the negotiation site for a truce by the truce table, you must select the site immediately before the Martian player rolls on the Martian morale effects table. Earth, Mars, or any one of the 4 asteroids may be selected. You can't select Jupiter. It's too far away and too scary. Only agents, and you can't select Mercury or Venus either. There's no base. There's no population on either of them. Only agents deployed on the solar display corresponding to the negotiation site are eligible to be utilized to expend political points to affect the negotiation table. Whenever a result obtained on the negotiation table grants a player the option to end or extend a truce, the player must decide immediately before the corporate players roll on the Earth morale table. If the truce is extended, it remains in full effect until terminated in some manner. If the truce is ended, all special conditions listed are mitigated instantly. Whenever truce is ended through a negotiations table, friendly agents may be embarked from an enemy planet or asteroid which was the negotiation site during the immediately subsequent ship transit allocation phase. This is an exception to 1311 and 1323. A friendly ship containing may always arrive. See, I'm wondering if this is supposed to only be the negotiation site, but it doesn't appear to be. There are no gains or losses of morale points for either player due to a truce having been ended through the negotiation table. If you break a truce by violating one of the special conditions, and either player can declare a truce, can break a truce at any time by doing so. If the Martian player breaks a truce, Earth morale is increased by 6. If the corporation breaks a truce, the Martian morale is increased by 4, and Earth morale is decreased by 2. Should both players simultaneously break a truce by moving ships into an enemy asteroid or planet, there's no morale level effects. Once a player has broken a truce, the other player always has the option to decline any subsequent truce declared after the die roll on the truce table has been made. This is true for both players if both have broken one or more truces. I'll get us to the sabotage. I kind of want to break here. This is the halfway point of the rule book, but there's significant, in the 28 pages, significant amounts of designer notes and player notes. So how much more are we looking? You know, we're almost done because we've done the tactical game. So we're looking at like 2 more rules basically. But I do want to pause. Knowing how, my battery. Knowing how close to the end of the rules we are, triggered me to only spend a couple of minutes smoking a pipe and come back up to finish them up. You know, consider, I don't know, I think most of you watch most of my videos because it feels like it's just a couple hundred of you who just like to watch them. But think about like this rule set. Very, very complex game when it comes down to it. It really is. And compare it to Barbarians at the Gates that I just did. How much of a simpler game that is. Maybe half as complex because it does have a significant amount of Chrome, etc. in it. And how much easier it is to figure out what these rules are doing. Yeah, sure, I had one problem. And it's a big one, but logic figures it out, right? Like, I know what these rules are trying to do. I can tell they're trying to model a reality in a way that is, you know, clear. Clear. They're not some gameplay type mechanism where if you don't express things perfectly, there's no way that the reader is going to get the answer, right? But on top of that, just the beauty of the layout and everything, even with the verbosity. I read this about as long ago as I read those rules before that game. The concepts in this are completely new. They really are. Almost everything. You know? Yeah, sure. The idea of the percentage loss table, I've seen that kind of thing before. But almost everything else in this game is very, very new. At least as new as anything, you know, in the CDG realm, right? They share their tables and all kind of stuff, and we might end up with questions as we play. But man, this was so much easier to go through. It was difficult to read through these rules, but I read through them once, and I feel like I have a grasp of what the game is about and what it's trying to do. I didn't have that with Barbarians at the Gate, and I also wasn't able to find shit in the rules. These, I can find stuff. I don't even need an index or anything because of the way the layout is set up. It just lands in my memory relatively well. We'll see if I end up eating those words. All right, sabotage. The Martian independence movement, blah, blah, blah. SPI's rules are just beautiful. I mean, I go blah, blah, blah. This is commentary. It's not important to the rules. Then there's the general base rule and the procedure, and that handles most of what you need. And then this is special cases. It's just, this is where Dunnigan had it absolutely right, was creating the boilerplate framework for rules. It doesn't work in every single game, but even in something like this that's this different, it does. Okay. Sabotage is Earth-based attempts to debilitate the Ares Corporation's production. Political points can affect the sabotage table. You got to get a result on the Martian morale table to get it. And then you declare points expended on the sabotage. The Martian player must roll the die. He can't refuse a sabotage, adjusting the result to account for any expenditure of points. Only agents in the in-orbit transit track. Yeah, this is normal. Sabotage attempt. Rolls on the table are mandatory when a sabotage attempt as a result is taken. You can't do them during truces, though. Like, they just don't happen. Production and logistics. Blah, 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 blah. Damaged ships and bases can be repaired, and new ships and bases can be produced with the expenditure of logistics points. Logistics points are accrued by a player every game turn based upon the number of asteroids controlled and whether the ships are being deployed. This is different than the production capability that's expressed over here. The production capability uses the logistics points, but the logistics points have to be you have to have both the capacity and the points available, is basically how it works. Each player can expend points to construct new ships or bases, to service ships with major damage, or neutralized bases. For each expenditure, you reduce the number of logistics points. Additionally, ships can be provided with fuel, missiles, and fighters at no expenditure of logistics points. They'll also be repaired of all minor damage. How logistics points are accrued: you get them at the beginning of the logistics and maintenance phase. For each friendly asteroid that is online, you get 3 logistics points. A friendly asteroid is online if all of the following criteria are fulfilled. There have to be 2 friendly miners and 1 friendly catapult at the asteroid in the in-orbit box. They'll be available for fighting as well. There must be at least 1 catapult at the player's home planet for every online asteroid. Mars is the Martian home, Earth is Ares' home. The second criteria implies that no more asteroids may be considered online than there are catapults in the home planet. Yeah. If Mars is friendly to the Martian player, 2 logistics points accrue to the Martian player at the beginning of the logistics and maintenance phase, in addition to any received from asteroids, because Mars hasn't been raped of all raw materials. Word can grant the Ares Corporations additional logistics points from time to time. Excess points that Earth would be using for themselves, but that they're willing to throw into the military effort. Although players may accrue logistics points from game turn to game turn, no player may ever have more than 16, which is the limit of the track. On the logistics track, your marker indicates you have 16 stored, and you get further, you don't, you eat them. Okay. Production requires time and logistics points. After you've accrued any logistics points, you may expend them on ship or base production up to your production capability. Each ship and base has a cost of logistics points and production time in game turns, which should be listed here, yeah. So like a base costs 5 turns and 7 logistics points, and we have them all laid out here, and they're the same for both sides. At the beginning of each logistics and maintenance phase, counters on the production track are moved 1 box along the track to the box with the lowest number. Any counter that reaches the 0 box gets deployed on the solar display. Ships are deployed at Earth if produced there, or at Mars if produced by the Martians. There is an exception, however. Bases are deployed to any friendly planet or asteroid. You don't have to declare where your base is being built. This is kind of a shame. I kind of wish you did. Not necessarily known to the other player, but you're just allowed to build it wherever you like, which feels a little wrong. Like, it feels like it just shouldn't be that easy. The Ares Corporation player's production capacity is 12 logistics points. The Ares Corporation may never expend more than 12 logistics points in any one logistics and maintenance phase. The Martian players changes throughout the game. The Martian player may expend up to, but never more than, the current production capacity. In order to expend any logistics points or in order to continue production of a ship or base on the production track, the Martians must have 1 catapult each in the in-orbit box of both Mars and Jupiter. These catapults are in addition to any required for receiving production points. If any ship or base is already on the production point and, for instance, the required catapult is not at Jupiter, the ship or base remains in the same spot. Work is not continued on that. What materials are there at Jupiter that absolutely have to be sent to Mars? I don't know. It may say here. Here we go. Hydrogen. Energy. Energy is available via conversion of hydrogen lifted from Jupiter by the hydroscoop based in Ganymede. Yeah. So that's the reasoning behind that. Resupply and servicing of ships and bases. Damaged ships and bases may be serviced, and any ship or base may be resupplied with missiles, fighters, and fuel at any friendly asteroid or planet at no cost in logistics points. After the players accrued any logistics points they have, they may resupply any eligible ships or expend logistics points to service damaged ships. Now, I'm a little confused here. I don't think this counts against the... So where did we have? In order to expend any logistics points or in order to continue production on a ship or base, I think that expend any logistics points, I don't think that counts for servicing. Because that's done anywhere. And this is under the production of ships and bases rule. I'm going to say that it's not part of this, that you can spend logistics points. One logistic point must be expended for each ship with major damage to service it. That ship must be in an in-orbit box or a ship on a ship transit track corresponding to a friendly planet or asteroid. There's no limit to the number of ships which may be serviced at any one asteroid or planet other than the overall restrictions on expenditure of logistics points. The fact that a ship has been serviced should be noticed on the fleet service status chart. You erase the damage or whatever. At any friendly asteroid or planet, Martian-controlled ships may be resupplied with fuel and or fighters, and missiles for that matter, but no Martian ship may be supplied with fighters prior to the 5th game turn. At any friendly asteroid or planet, corporation-controlled ships can be given fuel and missiles. Can't be done in the first turn because they don't have missiles yet. Nah, the missiles can't be done. 2 logistics points must be expended for each neutralized base that's serviced. They're more expensive to fix. The fact that it's neutralized is noted. They may be serviced only at friendly planets or asteroids. Well, they can't really go anywhere else. At the start of the game, all catapults are considered to have major damage or to have destroyed laser strength. We're going with the destroyed laser strength with the tactical game. However, they may be serviced, fitted with lasers actually, at any friendly planet or asteroid at no cost in logistics points. This is an exception to the normal repair rule. This instance is the only one in which major damage may be serviced at no cost in logistics points. I'm not sure how to mark this because, well, I mean, the real answer is you don't move your catapults on that first turn. Ares Corporation-controlled ships may not be supplied with fighters, and Martians may not be supplied with missiles in the strategic game. Yeah, not exactly. Let's go to this. This is the exception to that. When the tactical game is employed, players resolve combat. There's a significant distinction between the characteristics of fighters and missiles that's not reflected. At certain points during the game, the Ares Corporation may begin supplying friendly ships with fighters in the same way that they're supplied with missiles. They only get, a certain amount of cargo space. Ares Corporation-controlled ships may be supplied with fighters at the beginning of the 3rd game turn after the Ares Corporation player has won a battle during which the Martian player launched one or more fighters. At a certain point during the game, the Martian player may begin supplying friendly ships with missiles during the logistics and maintenance phase in the same summer. In the same summer? I think they mean manner, in which they are supplied with fighters and fuel. The Martian player may be supplied with missiles beginning in the 5th game turn after The Martian player has won a battle during which the Ares Corporation has launched one or more missiles, or beginning in the 11th game turn, whichever comes last. Whoa! Really now? That feels weird. I do not like how that's worded at all. It's the use of the or here that I don't like, because the or implies you can do it when this condition is met or this condition is met, not you're required to do both conditions. And I'm not sure what I'm doing with that yet. I have the feeling I'm going to take that as an actual or, because it's not that big a deal. I mean, they have their fighters. Players should note in the tactical game sequence that bases may launch fighters and or missiles. Missiles and fighters may be transferred between ships in the same task force or between ships and bases in the same transit track box during logistics and maintenance. So if you're at the same location, even in transit, you're able to like shift missiles and fighters between them. That feels a little weird because this may not be, like, I feel like you should have to be part of the same task force, same origin. Okay, we have talked about the tactical game. I'm just going to flip through this and make sure that there's not something that I missed. And I don't see anything. I thought the missiles and fighters would be there. Loss of crippled ships, we've already dealt with that in the tactical game. Basically, on the tactical chart, if a ship is crippled, you have to roll on the recovery table. And if you lost the location, there's some slight chance that your crippled ship will be captured. We don't have to worry about scenarios. Like I said, look at all this. Just look at it. We've got strategy notes going through both the strategic and tactical game. This player's notes, this is just more from that. We've got a set of developers' notes. That's Kostikin. They don't note him here. We've got Simonson's designer's notes, and we've got Brad Hessel's designer's notes here. You've got a significant number of playtesters. You have a developer. You know, I don't know, man. I'm so down on Compass right now after having played Barbarian at the Gates. I had thought they had cleaned up their act, and very clearly they hadn't. But you can compare these rules to like GMT's rules. GMT is often considered, you know, the good company, right? The one that's putting out polished product and whatnot. And honestly, these just blow their rules away, man. Can you imagine anything by GMT coming across this clearly? It's written in this this rather loose style where like just everything's mashed together into here's the section about this thing, and it's all just text. There's no case numbers or anything like that. And what's really important, I think, about SPI's rules is they say everything twice, in a sense, right? I think this is what makes it so readable, is saying everything twice. So what they do, the commentary, whatever, you know, it's usually not that big. It's often not there in the game. But the general rule gives you a very broad overview. The procedure tells you what you're going to do, and then this fills in all the specifics of what you do. But it does tell you what you're going to do. It matches into the procedure. It basically repeats the procedure in more depth. This is a tremendous pedagogical device. Yes, it uses up more paper. SPI rulebooks tend to be quite large until they started fucking around. The style they used in Ares and in some other games that they were trying to make more simplified. But I really think that they have done, in general, an outstanding job of bringing across, especially with some of these more complex games. You'll see it again with some others like, well, Freedom in the Galaxy was one example. Conquistador, even though those were printed by Avalon Hill, they kept the same damn rules from the SPI. Well, no, they changed Conquistador's rules. Yeah, but they kept a lot of the formatting. They didn't screw it that much, if I recall correctly. But I'm trying to remember John Carter. What a totally weird and different game. War of the Ring, a very, very weird game that, like, there's lots of different stuff going on in it, but it just really nails it down by that repetition, and a repetition that's formulaic and handled in a certain way. Very much like, it is the most wonderful device as far as I'm concerned. I've always liked Victory Games' rule books because they feel more chatty and comfortable, and I love the rule books that Dean Essick puts out in terms of really getting stuff down. But I don't think I've fell into a rule book that does it as well as the good ones that SPI did. And sure, they had their fuck-ups, right? Like, mainly lack of proofreading, things, where there's a lot of errors. Armada, there's a fair amount of errors in it. But you actually don't really need the errata. I know people are like, oh, there's a whole page of errata or whatever. Most of it's pretty fucking clear. There's a couple of places where you need to pencil stuff in, but not. Anyway, this is Battlefleet Mars. We're going to start playing it. It may take us fucking forever if I play out all the tactical battles. I'm probably not going to separate out the tactical battles into their own videos like I did when I was highlighting them. What I'm probably going to do is take very, very brief peeks into the battles if and when they happen. I'm hoping they're going to be fairly rare. This is not a game that's primarily about military action. Or it's not supposed to be. All right, let's send it up.